Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning worship service. We are the Cape Town Church of Christ, as I'm sure most of you know. What challenging times this has been. I know we keep on saying the same thing Sunday after Sunday, month after month, but it seems like the situation is moving more sideways than necessarily forward. I know this has been a tough week with, again, about 300 people on average dying in South Africa, between 10 and 15,000 new infections, and still about 15,000 people in the hospital daily. So we are far from out of the woods. And many people are facing challenges not only because of COVID, not because of only of family and loss and sickness, but the knock-on effect on the economy, on emotional health, and there's a whole lot going on. And therefore, we're busy with a series entitled Mind Change, a biblical path to overcoming life's challenges. Okay, so short recap, what have we learned so far? In John chapter 16, Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." What do we learn from that passage? A couple of basic things. One is, in this world you will have trouble. Often we are surprised. We think, oh, these are the end times, and it might or might not be, but we cannot determine it from the times itself, because Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. And he said it 2,000 years ago. We forget that Jesus himself faced trouble in his world, and therefore he warned us, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. We follow an overcomer, and as his followers, he is calling us to be overcomers too. But how do we do it? Romans 12:2 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by thinking in a new way. Our minds, we have learned, are incredibly powerful and complex. We've learned so far that we have neural pathways in our minds, and every time we think a thought, we create a pattern of thought. And the more we think a particular thought, the bigger the pattern becomes, until it becomes almost default to think that thought, which can be good news if you have the wrong kind of thinking, right kind of thinking, and bad news if you have the wrong kind of thinking. Today I want to talk about something connected but yet different, called reframing. Okay. My guess is that most of us have heard of the concept of cognitive bias. Okay, it's a psychological term. What is cognitive bias? It is a mistake in reasoning based on personal experiences or preferences. In other words, I'm making a mistake in the way that I reason about things, and I make that mistake because I'm reasoning that way based on a personal experience that I had or a personal preference. It is a mental filter or framework, you could say, that you've established in your mind. And if you've had a bad experience with something, it can create a certain filter in your life through which you see things. For example, many women, unfortunately, grew up around abusive men. Okay? And because of their experience with these men, it is easy for them to see all men as hurtful or abusive. Now, the reality is that not all men are hurtful and abusive. And my heart goes out to the different women that have gone through this. But the reality is that's not all men. But because of what you have sadly and devastatingly experienced, or what you had to endure, your filter shapes the way that you see men. But we don't only have that filter with regards to men. We can have it with regards to race, ethnicity. If I had a bad experience with a white person, I can see white people, Afrikaans people, English-speaking people a particular way. I can see black people or colored people or Asian people a particular way. And it forms or shapes a filter in my mind. Because of that filter, I might make an inaccurate judgment either on a situation or on a person. Now, a filter on a photo can change the way that you feel. Obviously today, lots of people post things on Facebook, younger people post things on Instagram, and they put filters on the photo because they want to feel different about the way they look, although it's a distortion of reality. Here's a very basic photo of me. I kept it as basic as I can. You can see no makeup. I never wear makeup, but you can clearly see that. As I took the photo, I could actually see how I'm aging, which was pretty scary. But I don't look, I look a bit monotone in the photo, and then you can actually put a smiling filter on it. Here I'm smiling. That's not even my teeth. But just looking at me, other than my smile looking a bit weird, I at least look a bit happier. Here's another photo of me. This is called I think the Hollywood filter or star filter, or like the red carpet filter. Here it took off about 20 years. My hair is a little bit highlighted. Even my beard is highlighted. but that changes the way that you would feel, or that I could feel if I look at that. Here is the bad hair day, maybe bad life experience. I'm not sure what one would call that. But that filter, at least I have more hair there, but it just looks like it grew longer, not that like the hairline move. Again, there's something serious happening here. Here's the Michael Bolton filter. Okay, so here it is. If I've got this filter, I feel like listening to Michael Bolton music. And here is the Hitman filter, or called the Baden-Question filter. Okay, if I want to go for that move. But I can also change my environment. So with it, if I want to feel like I'm in a work mode, I can go to the office. Or if I want to go to the beach and feel like a beach mode, I can go to the beach. Or obviously on this side here, if I want to go into my yacht. I don't know if many of you knew that I had a yacht, but I have a yacht. Here's me on my yacht, or here is my last time that I was in New York. Okay, again, so all these filters, I can look at these filters and it makes me feel a particular way. So I change my filters on Instagram so that I feel a particular way, and obviously, hopefully other people will feel that way too. A cognitive bias is what we might call a default filter. When our brain is pre-wired to think a certain way or to interpret a situation a certain way, even if our interpretation is completely inaccurate. That's why two different people can respond completely differently to the exact same situation. It's not the facts that have changed, it is the filter that have changed. I've through the years seen people come into church, two people, same service. One person says, greatest worship they've ever experienced. The other person, worst worship they've ever experienced. One person, oh man, bro, you cut me deep with that sermon. The other person feels like, man, did you even prepare for it? But it's not just church, it can be family group, it can be the way that a sports game was played, it can be a movie that you've seen, it can be a hike that you've been on, to a place that you visited. Two people, exact same situation, different experiences. We see the same thing happening in the Bible in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. Moses sends out 12 men to go and spy out the promised land, to see what it's like before they go and invade it. Two of the spies or men come back and said, oh my word, this is a beautiful and an amazing place. It is absolutely perfect. God has given it to us. Let us take the land. The other 10, though, came back, and although they saw the same land and the same people, they said, the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. The land we explored, listen to this, the land we explored devours those living in it. You have people eating land. All the people we saw they were of great size. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Now, my guess is that these 10 guys didn't stop all the giants or a couple of giants and interviewed them, asking them, hey, how do you see us? Do you maybe see us in a particular way? And the giants said, of course, yes, sure. We see you as grasshoppers. No. Their filter changed their perception of how they felt. And because they felt like grasshoppers, they assumed that they must look like grasshoppers to everyone else. It wasn't the facts that were different, it was the filter. All 12 of them saw the exact same thing, but their reports were completely different. But it's not just the filter that matters. Often it's also the frame that matters. You can be in the very same situation, but how you frame it will determine how you see it. What do I mean by reframing? It is creating a different way of looking at a situation or relationship. In other words, the situation remains the same, the relationship remains the same, but you decide to frame it in a different way. Take a look, for instance, at this picture. Now, this picture can describe anyone's potential day, and we can look at it in different ways. Maybe I take a frame, and the way that I frame this day that is going to be taking place today, as I frame it over here, and what I'm thinking is this is going to be a horrible day. Okay, it's going to be a terrible day. I'm going to battle to get up. Okay, I'm going to battle to wake up the kids and get everyone out of the house. I'm going to be stuck in traffic. There are going to be people that's going to be nasty in traffic. I'm going to get to work. Half of the people are going to be sick, or I'm going to be sent home, or my boss is going to be difficult, and I'm going to hate what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be stuck in the traffic on the way back. And guess what my day is going to be? I've already framed my day, and I've framed it to be a disaster. But I can look at the very same picture and I can frame it a different way, and I can look at my day from the very beginning in a different way, and I can say, man, this day is waiting for me with open arms to embrace me. Okay. I remember years ago, one of our neighbors, this is before we even had kids, one of the neighbors, their teenager, would get up every morning. We live next to Tygerberg High School, and the backside of the flats that we stayed in opened up towards Tygerberg High School. And every morning he would open up the windows of his flat looking at Tygerberg High School and say, "Good morning, Tygerberg!" Okay? Guess how he framed his day? Could there be difficult things that happened in his day? Most likely. But he's framed his day that today is going to be a great day. And I'm going to interact with great people. And I'm going to have great experiences. And although I might be in traffic and stuck there, it's going to give me an opportunity to listen to some great talks or call some great people. But guess how this person's day will turn out if they frame it this way? It will turn out and they will experience it the way that they have framed it. And those two different people are having a different experience, not because the facts have changed, but because of how they framed it. And how you frame a day, frame a person, or frame a situation will determine how you respond to it. Let me say it again. The way that you frame a day, either there or here, or you frame a person either here or there, or circumstances, will ultimately determine how you will respond to it. Sometimes, actually quite often, certainly for me, life doesn't turn out the way you pictured it. Okay, we did a series about that earlier this year or last year, where life doesn't always turn out the way you picture it. And the older you get, the more you realize, wait a minute, this is not the way that I pictured it. In the book of Philippians, we find the Apostle Paul in a situation that we've looked at before as well, where life didn't turn out the way that he pictured it. Paul was a missionary of note, and he was determined to be used by God as a tool to bring the age to come, God's new world, into the present. One of his ambitions was to go to the city of Rome and preach the gospel there. Rome was the perfect city from which the gospel could then spread all over the world. But life didn't turn out the way that he pictured it. Instead of being in Rome preaching, he finds himself in Rome as a prisoner awaiting possible execution. Sitting there in his prison cell, he had a decision, he had a choice of how will he frame his situation. And in Philippians chapter 1 verse 12, the NVV version says, or NVV Bible says, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me really sucks. As a result of all the hell I've been through, I'm quitting my family group and I'm never going to church again." That's the NVV version, the New Victim version. Okay? Luckily for us, that's not the way that he framed it. Let's take a look at the NIV version. Philippians 1 verse 12. "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. Because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear." These guys have heard about his dire circumstances. They have heard that life has been difficult for him, and they've heard that he's been captured, he's in jail, and they're thinking, man, he's most probably having a terrible time. But that's not the way that he frames it. He says to them, listen here, I want you to know that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. And as a result of what has happened to me, the way that he's framing it, It has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, because I'm chained like a criminal, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. He's framing his situation and saying, listen here, the framing of this situation, the way that I'm looking at this situation is that God has used it in a powerful way. The facts didn't change. The situation didn't change, but how he framed it did. In this world, you will have trouble. That's a fact. But it may be possible to overcome it by how you frame it, okay? By reframing your scenario. So this morning, that was actually a semi-introduction. I want to unpack 3 things, will actually not be that long, on taking a look at 3 practices that will help us to reframe situations and people. Practice number 1. We need to learn the practice of thanking God for what didn't happen, okay? Let me read that again. Thanking God for what did not happen. We so easily focus on what did happen that we do not see what did not happen. We might focus on, I had a car crash, but we do not focus on, I'm actually still alive. We might focus on, I got burgled and that's terrible, but in actual fact, none of us got hurt. We might focus on, during this period of lockdown, I've had a 25% salary cut. That is just terrible, but we do not focus on the fact that I actually still have a job and I have 75% of my salary. It's all about looking at thanking God for what did not happen. Now, but they say, what is it, nature or nurture? I think it's a little bit of a combination for me, that one of the things that I think prayerfully through God's kindness served me well is that this is almost a natural pattern of thinking for me. Now, I'm not sure if it's natural or whether I learned it from my dad growing up. He used to always say to me, whenever I made some severe mistakes, I wrote off a car that he gave me, and within 10 days, I had a couple of problems along the way, and he would always say, son, it's not the end of the world till the world ends. Okay, that was very clear to me. It's not the end of the world till the world ends. And from that, I've learned that I always need to look at what did not happen. As many of you guys know, years ago, Lisa and I were praying in a park. 2 men attacked us, stabbed me in the mouth, and in the cheek and in the mouth. And as we were running away, trying to run away from these guys, and I'm talking to Lisa and spitting blood, the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm saying, man, we are so lucky, okay, because of what did not happen. Because what was going through my mind is they did not touch her. They could have stabbed me in the neck, they could have stabbed me in the heart, they could have stabbed me in the head. I only got the cheek and the mouth, okay. Look at what did not happen. Okay, again, I'm sure we're tired of these examples, but they're a reality for me in my everyday. I had spine damage, minor spine damage, a number of years ago, but what it has caused is caused a drop foot for me that makes my leg limp. My one leg, actually it's quite interesting, I looked the other day, if I put my fingers around the one leg, it looks like that. If I put my fingers around the other leg, it looks like that. Then there's these electrical shocks and everything that run through it. Not cool, okay? What didn't happen? I still have a leg, okay? I can still walk. Okay, I have constant back pain, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for more than 10 years. Okay, what did happen is that there's pain. The positive is most of the time, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Sometimes later in the afternoon, 6 or 7, sometimes 8. Very rarely 10. Maybe twice a year. Okay, at most, it will be 10. We have to look at our life that way and say, let's thank God for what didn't happen. I might have wanted to be married, but now I'm not. But let's thank God for what I do have. A relationship with Him, friendships, a job, whatever it might be. We all have things that did go wrong, but we need to learn to reframe by actually focusing on thanking God for what did not happen. Somehow for me, I always look at it, and sometimes it's an enemy for me, and sometimes I'm insensitive in this. I remember my mom years ago, and she's most probably watching this sermon, someone broke into a car, and I can't remember whether they stole the wallet or this or that, and I said, sure, that's terrible news. And I said, which window of the car did they break? And she said, no, that small little window on the side. I said, sure, aren't you lucky? They took the small window, not the big window. The big window would have been expensive. And hard to replace. I mean, what a blessing that they took the small window. But again, I do think if we just reframe it, it will make an enormous difference. A second practice to learn is to learn the practice of pre-framing. What do I mean by pre-framing? Pre-framing is deciding how you will frame a situation before you actually engage in the situation. Why does it matter? Because our thoughts or frames shape our experiences. If you go into a work meeting and you think this is just going to be the most boring meeting ever, guess how the meeting's going to turn out? Boring. If you go into a family group discussion or a church service and you think this is just going to be same-o, I'm not going to learn anything new, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to learn anything new. We said it before, if you go into the day thinking it's going to be a disaster, it's most probably going to be a disaster. If you think you're not going to have the energy, you're not going to have the energy. If you think you're going to get in conflict, you're going to get into conflict. If you think of your spouse, your parent, or your children, or your friends a particular way, they're most probably going to turn out that way. I need a pre-frame. I need to decide beforehand that this is going to be a great meeting. I'm going to learn a lot from this service. I'm going to walk in the door and I'm going to connect with my spouse and my kids or my friends. Okay? We have to learn to pre-frame. Again, through God's grace or kindness, again, I don't even know when this happened, but I've shared partly of it years ago of trying to memorize scriptures. I've made a decision that every day is going to be the best day of my life. And so every morning I wake up and I think, first I struggle to get up, but then I make a decision and say, I need to pre-frame this day. This day is waiting for me with open arms and it wants to hug me and give me the best that is possible. The last practice. To look for God's goodness. Okay, we need to make a practice of looking for God's goodness. We need to look for God's goodness wherever we go, because you will always find what you're looking for. If you've ever made the decision to buy a particular car, or you're thinking of buying a particular car, it can be a car, it can be a TV, it can be a phone. Guess what happens? Suddenly you see that car, that TV, or that phone, you just simply see it everywhere. If you look for good, you will find good. If you look for bad, you will find bad. If you choose to focus on the things that God hasn't given you, you will find it. Let me say it again. If you choose to focus on the things that God hasn't given you, you will find it. If you choose to focus on the things that God has given you, and the Bible says that all good things come from above, you will find it. You will always find whatever it is that you are looking for. This has most likely been the most interesting 18 months of my life on several levels, and my guess is that it's similar for most of us. That this is the first worldwide epidemic that any of us have gone through. On a personal level, those first 3-5 weeks was incredibly hard by being sort of in cabin fever at home. Emotions were running high, everyone is homeschooling. Eventually we got out, we could walk the streets, we could go back to work, we could do a bunch of things, but still so many restrictions, so much loss, so much going on. I felt like, man, do I even have a purpose in the midst of it all? I got bored. I felt stuck on so many different things. Now, if that's the way that I frame it, then that is the way that I'll experience it, and that is the way that I will respond to it. But if I also look through a different lens and a different frame, or try to reframe it differently and look for God's goodness and things, what I would see is 2020 was the year that Michaela got baptized. What a gift, what a blessing to see how God has worked in her life. In 2020, we also got a new little kitten. We also already had 2, now we have a 3rd. Yeah, it's me bonding with him. His name is Dipper. Not that. Why stop at a kitten when you can also have a dog? Okay, so we also got a dog. The dog, it's a she, another she in the house. The dog's name is Luna. But also in 2020, we learned to, since we were stuck at home, we could sort of redo the lawn. Although from that picture to now, the lawn is again, but let's focus on the positive. 2020, I had time to grow a mean beard. Meanwhile, I got rid of the beard again. My kids being stuck at home, they could entertain themselves with all kind of different things, figuring out how to make each day a beautiful day. They could play around with hair color since I didn't have to go to school. Hey, let's see what we'll do. We'll do pink. I almost did pink as well. Okay, we could buy some nice, what do you call the stokbrood? Stick bread. Maybe that's even in English. I'm not sure. Okay, could go to the beach, spend some time with their mom. Could go car shopping. This is my, it's being delivered in a month's time. Jesus loves me. Okay, I'm only kidding, it's actually not. But if one of you wants a gift, this is a Porsche, which one is this? It's the GT3 RS or the GT2 RS. I will take either. The one's a little bit more expensive than the other, $1 million or $2 million, but whatever you feel like gifting, I will take. I will not say no to the Lord's blessing. I could do things, although we couldn't necessarily go to places. I could go with the girls and go and look at the lights from Signal Hill. Chloe looks pretty happy there. Okay, all different experiences. Lisa, coffee and ice cream with the kids. This is Father's Day during lockdown. This is what one calls Father's Day. So here, Lisa is massaging my shoulders. This one is busy with the one foot, Michaela. Pippa is busy with the other foot, and Chloe is thinking and processing through it all. We also got to spend wonderful time with various friends. These are all blessings. It's all a choice and a decision to look at it. How will I frame it? How will I see it? It's the same on the church front. Okay, in the beginning it was pretty dark and gloomy. We had to learn to get used to YouTube church, if you may, not meeting together. In the beginning, Zoom was maybe a bit of fun, but my guess is later on, most of us were zoomed out. Then our world not only went through COVID, but through racial tension. We had to work through that. We lost Sandra. We lost Cyril. We lost Dan. We had outdoor services. We didn't have outdoor services. We had family group. We didn't have family group. Things would go up, down, up, down. But again, it's a choice of how you frame it. We also had many great experiences as a church. We learned early on, and I think that God has taught us this over the last 18 months, navigating anxiety, working through difficult times. We had a great series interacting with different brothers and sisters on race, culture, and the church. We did a series on not the way that you picture it. We did a series on locked up, okay? And at the end of last year, we did a series on after the storm, although we knew the storm wasn't quite over, but it seemed like most of it was. Then when we realized it wasn't, there was a series called Too Much, but we could work through it. Not only that, but we, as we worked through those things, were able to hire Alistair as our youth and family minister, something that we have been working towards and praying for months at end. Not only that, we also got to hire Remo, and Palisa obviously moved down from Johannesburg, and Remo as our campus minister. Again, just such a great blessing from God. During that time, because of what God has blessed us with, we could also help the kids at Aldine by serving them and their parents' meals daily for actually months at end. We obviously quickly on the photos that they sent us realized that the kids didn't have masks. Then we were able to give them, the sisters and vicars made a 500 masks to give to the kids. We were able to partner with Macro and Hope Worldwide, and I think it was KFC, to be able to serve families throughout the Western Cape. In partnership with them. And then also we took up an initiative as a church again and partnership with Hope Worldwide and supporting a family. And by individual contributions, above everything else that we have given, we were able to support 118 different families, okay, throughout the Western Cape. It's all about how you frame it. In other words, if we believe that in all things God is working, that He's working in COVID, He's working in loss, He's working in the economy, and good or bad, God is always working. And we believe inherently that God is still King, He is still on His throne, Jesus still rules and works for our good. Then we will reject unhealthy thoughts. We will reject doom and gloom. We will do away with the frames of I can't, I won't, I'm a failure, I'm useless. We're going to have to reframe things. We're not just going to passively stand by and let our circumstances dictate our future. We're going to have to change the way that we frame it. We're not going to interpret the goodness of God through our circumstances. In other words, I think, man, what is the goodness of God? Is God good? Let me look at my circumstances and decide whether God is good or not. No, rather, we're going to interpret our circumstances through the goodness of God. We're going to take a look at our circumstances. We're going to frame it and say it that we believe that no matter how bad things might get, we believe God's goodness is somewhere in this and He is working. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you frame it, and how you frame it is how you will perceive it, how you perceive it is how you will experience it, and how you will ultimately act on it. Again, back in closing to Paul, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to see and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing and perfect will. He says if we reframe our minds, if we look for God's goodness, if we look at the things that didn't happen to us and we reframe all of these things, God's will in the very moment will become clear for us as to who it is that He wants us to be, where it is that He wants us to go, that will bring us most joy in Him. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, sure, that is, as I think of it myself, a mouthful, Father, but I pray that through it that our eyes will be upon You, and that we will realize that all this reframing and re-looking and everything can only happen through Your mercy, through Your grace, through Your Spirit working in us and through us, Father. And ultimately, we can overcome because Jesus overcame, Father. And as You said, in this world we will have trouble, but He overcame, and so must we. And Father, I pray this morning as we eat the bread, as we drink the fruit of the vine, that it will be for us a time of celebration, a time of knowing that there is great hope, a time of knowing that You have come through Jesus to conquer evil, and that You have been in that process for 2,000 years, and that You work in us and through us to bring Your new world to the present, till one day He comes to rule and reign over all. For we love You, we praise Your Son's name. Amen.